Welcome to the 15th edition of the Jaipur Literature Festival, protected by the tall Banega Swast India, at the Jan Mikulski Foundation Baithak. We are delighted to introduce our next session, Moorti Chor, the Idol Thief, and this session is presented by the Morning Standard. S. Vijay Kumar's Idol Thief tells the astonishing true story of New York-based antique dealer Subhash Kapoor, named as one of the most prolific commodity smugglers in the world. Kapoor's pieces graced museums across the globe, while he's serving time in prison for the theft of artifacts worth millions. The extent of his crimes is incalculable. In conversation with Anirudh Kanisetti, S. Vijay Kumar discusses his first book and the rampant but precise pillaging of India's temples and its ancient wealth. A quick introduction of both the speakers. S. Vijay Kumar is a self-taught sculptor and Indian temple art enthusiast who started writing extensively on the nuances of the art form on a bilingual blog site called Poetry in Stone. For the past 16 years, Kumar has been instrumental in assisting the restitution efforts of high-profile trafficked Indian artifacts. And please welcome Anirudh Kanisetti, who is an historian, researcher, and a writer. He is the author of Lords of the Deccan, Southern India, from the Chalukyas to the Cholas, presenting a new history of early medieval India. His work has been featured in the Hindu, the New Indian Express, Live Mint, and the print. May we please start the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to you all. I hope you can hear us just fine. Is that all okay? Can you hear us? All right, fantastic, cool. So let's begin. The Idol Thief is one of the most exciting art history books that I've read in a long time. It has everything that you really look for. It has a profound sense of time and place. And really what really shines through the book is, of course, Vijay's own passion for the work that he does, which, as the introduction said, is really finding and restituting idols and artworks that have been taken away from India by less than legitimate means and are now mostly in private collections and museum collections abroad. So thank you, first of all, Vijay. Thank you so much for doing this session.
Thank you, Anirudh. Thank you, JLF and William Dalrymple as well for extending this invitation. And to talk about a subject that most people consider too problematic to talk about in such festivals. And thanks for inviting us over.
My pleasure. My pleasure to be here with you. And thank you for writing this book and for the work you've been doing over all these years, which hopefully we will get into over the course of the next hour or so. So to begin with, Vijay, I'd like to, you run Poetry in Stone. Can you tell us a little bit about how you gradually began to get into art history? How was it that you developed an interest and studied about sculpture? And how did it gradually begin to dawn upon you that the idols that you see in museum collections today have rather sordid pasts?
Before I start, I would like to dedicate my work to the unknown artists and sculptors. I think we owe it to them, a community that's been forgotten. So my first salute to the Stavatis and to the kings and patrons who sponsored and took care of them, and to the common people, including the people who are here, who support art. So my first salute to them, and our work is incomplete without credit to our publishers. Mine is a commissioned book by Juggernaut. I wrote only the English version. Manju and the Kirakil Padevakam did the rest, and I'm happy there are in 5 languages. But I was inspired on this journey not just to write, by a small work of historic fiction. When I say small work, it's the best-selling work of historic fiction in Tamil called Ponniyin Selvan, which thankfully Maniratnam is hoping to bring it to the big screen shortly. But I read it, it's a book that was written 50 years ago on the great Chola king Rajaraja. And my work was a small tribute. It started of self-learning, understanding the greatness of Indic temple art to start with inside India and Southeast Asia.
So I think one thing that we actually discussed when we were figuring out how to talk about this session is that the removal of art objects from India actually has a very long history band. It's not something that's unique to the last few decades. It really started in the colonial period itself, and there was a very clear kind of distinction between the ruling elite and the communities that were housing and still worshipping idols in some cases. So can you tell us a little bit about like how, first of all, these objects came to be produced? Because you have this wonderful chapter where you begin by actually talking about the mind of a medieval sculptor and how he may have seen the god that he was making, and kind of take us through the last couple of centuries in terms of how these idols have been received and how they've been removed from their original context.
No, for me, I took on Chola bronzes as my field of study because it was a subject that was hardly studied or taught, and there were very few experts extant. Even these small slides that you see now in terms of dating sculptures is something that is not available off the shelf, and it comes from years of visiting sites, visiting museums, and looking at the stylistic variations in terms of iconography and iconometry. And I'm really happy that I had a team of volunteers who would assist us on this. These are cast by what is called the last wax method. Basically, the entire image is cast in wax, fashioned in wax, handcrafted, and then it's coated with clay, and then basically we heat it up to leave a hollow mold into which the molten metal is poured. But what is interesting is once the metal hardens, the mold has to be broken. The earthen mold or clay mold has to be broken to reveal the Lord. That means these are individually handmade, not like your China-made murtis that you come by the hundreds of the same mold. So each of them are individually handmade, but also have certain material imperfections or stylistic variations, which we have managed to specialize in spotting. And as we go in, what we have looked at in terms of looting, we would like to split it into colonial loot, post-colonial loot, and looting after 1970. Colonial looting is something that is a subject that is today coming back with the Benin bronzes and, of course, the Parthian marbles. But Indian art has not been afforded the proper study. For example, we have a Danish colony near Chennai called Trankaba, from which the Danish collector stumbled upon a set of 30 bronzes, and he promptly took it and he sold it to the Prince of Denmark, and they are now in the Danish Museum, and he told them that he bought it from the locals. But the original Danish records said he gave them the locals a bag of rice and some betel nuts. And we have another case of Lowenthal, who was a Jesuit priest traveling around Karnataka. He took 87 Hoysala sculptures, gave them a pair of spectacles. They are now on display in Danish museums. So there are a lot of these colonial loot, but what people don't understand is what the custodians did. And in fact, that's how the first chapter ends in the book, of murtis being buried for safety. When faced with the traumatic events of early 14th century, the custodians basically buried the bronzes. And that's how the chapter ends, in the sense that the custodians, when faced with the threat of their gods being broken or melted, they actually buried them for safety. Unfortunately, these bronzes and metal icons and stone all over India were never recovered, and that's a puzzle that has not been answered by many historians, in the sense that when they took so much time to bury them, why did they not bring them back to worship? And after the book was written, I think I have a small video that I want to play of you can see what's happened, and this came up a full 1 year after the book was published. So we'll just see this amazing clip. And what you're seeing is actually a 10th century Chola bronze as it's coming out of the earth from where he was found by villagers. And the remarkable part is, and people are already started praying to him. They are asking him to be kept placing this direction. People want to wash him. And within a few minutes, I actually have the pictures of them offering flowers to him, and he's become the god that he once was. And thank you. Can we go back to the slides, please?
I'd actually like to. I think this one thing I really enjoy about the book is that you consistently talk about how these objects that seem to be made of nothing more than cool metal, at least in the analytical gaze of the art historian, are imbued with such passion and meaning in these local communities, And that's something that's not really fully appreciated in my view, because this is a idol that has been underground for 1,000 years, if not more. And yet, the second that it comes out of the ground again, it is immediately the object of worship once again.
Well, that was the intent of the original custodian, right?
Yeah.
To someday have him back for worship. And we call our initiative hashtag Bring Our Gods Home. So maybe if you could just pass a few slides for me, please. And the clicker doesn't work. Yeah. And there you see our most recent restitution of a bronze group of the Vijayanagara period. Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita. Unfortunately, Hanuman of this group is still stuck in a museum in Southeast Asia. We hope to bring him back, but can we just go? And there they are, back to the temple from where they were stolen in 1978. And we recovered it from a dealer in London who had this set, thanks to a informer who had told us that they had won bronze. And this is exactly what is payday for us. We are a group, we are a volunteer group, we don't take funding donations, we don't apply for any rewards. This to us is payday. But people have to realize this is where they end. They don't necessarily end up in museums. There you see our Moorti is lining the swimming pool of one of the richest men in US. And they were definitely not made to stand guard outside a swimming pool.
I think we actually have a video of this home, but we'll come to that in just a second, Vijay, because I have a few questions. You mentioned there's this division of colonial, post-colonial, post-70s. The 70s are very much a benchmark in your book, because really that's when it becomes technically illegal to remove old artifacts from the boundaries of the country.
Well,
right?
that's a misnomer and a misunderstanding that the art market is propagating, because India has its own patrimony laws right from 1878. And the common law is that no thief can pass on good title. What the 1970 UN statute basically means is if you can prove the theft is after 1970, you don't have to invoke any laws, you just invoke the statute. The destination country has 30 days to refute your claim. If they cannot, the artifact is forfeit to India, if they are all signatories to the convention. So a lot of art market, including some of the examples that we're going to see today, they build fake provenances. They have an old typewriter and old letterheads, which they just fake a 1968 or 1969 receipt from a hotel or a shop in Delhi or Bombay. And that's the only paperwork in which millions of dollars worth of stuff is stolen, without realizing that that is useless, worthless. It's just that if you have a proof of an in situ object of theft after 1970, you don't need to go to courts. But if it doesn't, miraculous, it's not a Lakshman Rekha that washes a pre-1970 theft. In fact, I will show you a case where we have solved a theft from 1961 from the Nalanda Museum, the most sacred sites of a Buddha that we got back again from London. And the thing is, we need to work on common law, which people don't realize, is that a thief cannot pass good title. That means a stolen object continues to be a stolen object, and that's where people are looking up to us now, thanks to the reach of the book as well, where people are saying, oh, my grandfather's time something was stolen. Can you help us?
This again, there's one thing that I really enjoyed in the book, is that you show how there's this fascinating system of like very clever people trying to find all these inventive loopholes that they kind of leap through to kind of make sure they get their hands on these objects. And to me, it's so striking because, and I think it emphasizes really the importance of your work, because until I read The Idol Thief, my impression was that these are mostly, even if they are going abroad, they're mostly ending up in museum collections, and at least they're being studied, and they are contributing in some way to the total of human knowledge. But
that's the
this
cue.
is not
I think let's play the video.
Yes,
Let's let the audience look at.
see the video.
You guys need to wait for it. This is our job. We look at these kind of celebrity houses coming up for sale. There you have the swimming pool. The garden with the sculpture right there.
There as well.
There's a Nandi there, and a Mahishasura there. And this is the house that's up for sale. And this is where bulk of our, thank you. That's where bulk of our objects end up. These murtis that were destined to be in the abodes of gods Some of them end up in museums, but many are sold into private collectors, and thereby they're destroying context. An archaeologically significant object is being reduced to a showpiece curio.
I really like the fact that your team is actually finding these videos, these trailers of houses that are up for sale.
It's
And
not only that, you see an actual party in New York where our gods are putting price tagged and they're auctioned. Can we just quickly run through them?
Sure.
You can actually see the sale happening and people posing in front of our gods. And this is a now deceased collector in his apartment in Thailand. And as we just go along, we see his party for his friends, his last party on Facebook. We can just keep rolling. There you see at every nook and corner, you have our Moortis in Bangkok, in London. And we were quite lucky. Just hold it there for me. When all of you visit, just one more. When we go to a museum, when you see an artifact like this, obvious questions are not being asked. And what strikes you when you see this image?
I mean, personally, as a medieval Deccan nerd, I'm immediately reminded of the identification of the Chalukya dynasty with the Varaha. So again, there's all these meanings which aren't immediately obvious to somebody who has not read up about them. If you just see them with this nice, plain, cool
Why
background.
are the legs chopped off? You can actually see.
There's a deliberate defacement.
You can actually see they have been chopped off with an axe. Can we just go to the next slide, please? This was in Devgarh. People would know. And we go to the next, just click one more. There you see, this was destroyed in 2008. And you can actually see how the pida, actually the pedestal, is anchoring this Moorti. And because that pedum weighs almost 3 tons, the robbers have hacked off the legs. And that's the case with almost every object that you're going to see now. We just keep running so that, and they're also deliberately cut and broken to aid export. And here you see an object that was on sale in America last year, and you can actually see that they've cut it to multiple parts so that the Varaha can be assembled back. And there are specialist restorers who do this job. Not only that, this is in Umri, one of the very rare sculptures, temples for the sun god, and there his head is cut and they are now staked. And lot of stuff this is the one that I wanted to show you of and these bronzes were getting smuggled out by this collecting lobby, and most of these, the collectors actually wanted to have bronzes with incrustations. And we are going to see the villain of my book. Can you just go? And that's the villain of my book. Behind them are 2 bronzes, Subhash Kapoor. The 2 bronzes carry a rather sad story. As Kapoor was arrested via an Interpol notice in Stuttgart, Germany, he fought his extradition to India for 8 months. He wrote handwritten notes to his sister, girlfriend, and manager. The notes read, "Hide the 2 dancers and consorts in my cabinet." Along with this Nataraja and Uma, 2 more bronzes valued at $13.5 million have been hidden by the sister in New York since 2012. We have not been able to find. But more still is the damage they did on the ground. What you're seeing is, just hold this for me. This Nataraja was stolen in 2005. His hand was sawn off because people thought it was made of gold. A jeweler melted his hand. In the ensuing confusion, the jeweler was killed. So in Coimbatore, there was a murder case, but this Nataraja in his hand-cut state left India via Nepal into Hong Kong, into London. A world-renowned restorer recreated his hand, obviously losing all red flags, not reporting it to the cops. Then it went to New York and was on sale by Kapoor for $3.5 million. A month before Kapoor was arrested, it quietly came back to Chennai and it was handed over to the police. So without a passport or a US visa, this Nataraja traveled the globe and quietly was handed over. And as a fallout of the book, we worked with Homeland Security, and in this state, Neil Perry Smith, I can name him now, he threatened to sue us when we wrote the book, was this restorer in London who did this. And he has been extradited to America last year, and he's currently facing time. And we also go, all the suppliers are currently spending time. This was one supplier called Deen Dayal. And then the number 2 of the idol wing, CID, was also involved in smuggling, and he is also currently being charged. And all of that came out of work done by, just hold it for me, by the book.
There's so much to get into in what you described to us, Vijay. In terms of, you literally trace out this enormous criminal nexus, which ranges from petty thieves, who are just doing this maybe one night every few months or something. They just get paid up a couple of lakhs. And then there's this entire network of people in various places, from shipping agents to Subhash Kapoor's art dealers who are based in India, to people who are going to be doing the restoring, and basically all these layers and layers of whitewashing that happen, culminating finally in the final buyer being willing to overlook somewhat dodgy provenances. So
I wouldn't say overlook, but we are in Jaipur. The biggest smuggler of the previous decade was let away scot-free because of want of evidence. He was arrested in 2003 because a British journalist wrote a book about Sotheby's involved in art theft and art crime. And Sotheby's representative used to come to Jaipur, stay with this smuggler. They used to go back and put TA bills. And in fact, he has copies of these bills that they submitted. They used to go on recce trips with soul scholars and smugglers. They used to pick and choose the best of Indian art. And then it was stolen. So it was not some random theft. This was a targeted looting on an industrial scale. And Vaman Gia was said to have sold about 10,000 works of Indian art via Sotheby's and a host of Swiss companies. He was acquitted in 2013 for want of evidence. His farmhouses in Delhi yielded 800 odd antiquities. And now they don't even need to come to India. What you're seeing is actually robber offering photos like Navina Swayamvar. These robbers in India are sending these images. The second image, the 2 door guardians have a dhoti behind, and the third one actually has a lungi behind. All these are theft photos where the robbers actually send it out on social media, and there's an online bidding that happens, and Kapoor bought these items.
On social media, so this is something on platforms are not taking action against.
Yes.
Wow. How do you recreate all these details, right? You're talking about all these bills that these people are issuing. One thing I particularly enjoyed about the book, though you talk about in a somewhat darker context, was the desperate notes that Subhash Kapoor was sending out, where he's like misspelled things because in such a tearing hurry to get his lawyer involved. How do you get your hands on all this evidence, and how was it that, given that this art smuggler had managed to get away in 2013, how did you manage to really build a compelling case and really nail Subhash Kapoor?
You are perfectly following my cue in the sense that that image of Ardhanarishwara nailed Kapoor. And it was a theft that happened in 2004. I blogged about her or him, Androgynos form, in 2006, not knowing that he was already stolen. And it's such a brilliant depiction of the androgynous form of Shiva that I had used it to study the iconography of the Ardhanarishwara form.
Right.
But he was already smuggled out.
No, if you can just take a little bit of a tangent, Vijay, you have this beautiful description of the composition of the piece. So if you could just like talk us through
So basically, imagine you're merging in terms of iconometry, the male form is slightly depicted taller than the female form. So when you cut both and join together, there is a slant to the male form side. So if you actually see it without the Nandi or the bull, you will see that it's tilted too precariously to one side. And actually my logic was that the sculptor brings in the bull to balance the composition. And I've talked so much about it, but you have not realized that the Moorti is missing 2 hands. And the beauty of the Moorti is so good that you fail to notice 2 hands are broken. And these were the clues that in my subconscious mind, I had memorized this image. And when they came up as an exhibit in the Art Gallery of New South Wales, I saw it the moment I said, it's stolen. I know it. It's from Vidyachalam. Went to social media, called our team of volunteers, and somebody went to Vidyachalam, the temple. They were expecting an empty niche, but we saw a fake. And the modern fake was so bad. Normally in the Ardhanarishwara, the hand is supposed to be in touching the Nandi's head, and there they have put it in Abhaya, and the left hand is supposed to be like this. And if the sculptor or whoever the faker had gone to the next village, you could have seen how a Chola Ardhanarishwara would be. But he made it like this, and more shamefully, the public worshipped it for 12 years before we proved it. And in fact, this was a published sculpture, and the Art Gallery of New South Wales had it in their own museum, in their own library. That was the provenance verification they did. And finally, when we exposed it, the Moorti came back. And there you have, in fact, they tried to bring it, Tony Abbott tried to bring it in his private plane. They were too heavy, because a lot of people don't realize how big, heavy bronzes are. So it was actually 2 flights from Australia. And we talk about the Nataraja. So the Nataraja, again, was sold for $5.6 million. We come to that in a while.
I want to understand a little bit about, again, once as you're reconstructing Subhash's system, that as you're kind of figuring out all these little details and putting these dossiers together, how did it feel realizing that you're on the trail of something vast? Because 3.5 million is what he's selling one bronze for, and 3.5 million is probably more than what many of us in the audience will see in our entire lifetimes. And this is what he's selling a single object for. You must have got a sense that this is a really big fish with a lot of power and influence. How did it feel as you got close to him?
Well, we have an object that's going to come back. It's a Bharut Yakshi. It was a private deity from Bharut, 2nd century BC. It was a registered antiquity by a farmer. Robbers robbed him in 2002. It was cut into 3 pieces, sent to America. An American restorer, who's again being charged, stuck them together. And she was in the market for $15 million. And that's a lot of money when you multiply it with 74. But for the audience, those keen-eyed people, there is a clue in this small black and white photograph that actually a German researcher friend helped us solve and bring back in antiquity. And I wanted to show this because of the importance of documentation. A lot of places when we go to photograph, even in temples, they almost lynch us. They say, if you photograph the Moorti or the Swami will lose power. They're like, our God is not so weak that you take a photograph, but without documented archive, it's impossible. Just to put things in context, again coming back to our first discussion, India brought back 19 antiquities from 1972 to 2019. And this is not my data, it is from the CAG report of 2013. And most shockingly, from 2000 to 2012, it was 0. So from 1972, when India signed the UN convention, to 2013, India had brought back 19. Today, we stand at 304, and I would say that about 95% of what has come back is the work that we have done. Success has many fathers, and we are happy as long as the Moortis come home. And this particular Moorti was very, very special to us. Just go one slide up, yeah. And this was a site in Andhra Pradesh called Chandavaram, and this is to explain, it was robbed 3 times in 18 months. It was an ASI site. First time they came, they scared away the custodians or the guards. They took 4 icons. The next time they came, police protection was given. They tied up the police and they robbed it. The third time they drugged the police. So in a span of 18 months, objects were stolen. It was again broken into 2, but we managed to bring it back, and it came back from Australia. So a lot of these, and with proof. And a sister object is currently at the Louvre, Abu Dhabi, which we are trying to get back. A lot of times, it's a long, drawn struggle. It's not easy. When somebody pays millions of dollars, they're just not going to give it back because you're asking. So it puts a lot of responsibility on us. So maybe I show you another video of how actual cracking happens, of how we crack a theft. Can you play the next?
I think it's upside down. It's playing upside down.
It's not supposed to be like that.
If you could just rotate your heads with us, please. You will, there. In the corner there, you will see on the right.
You see a Chola bronze there, and this is an actual auction promo video. And there is a match. So that's how the actual work done. So you have all of these monitors, and then we do the matching. In fact, in this case, the robbers had made a fake, and the fake was worshipped in the temple for the last 47 years. And we have, the claim is currently pending up. And this is how my room looks like. And thank you.
I was just thinking, we must take. These are obviously very cunning, intelligent people, and the fact that you have such a large team of volunteers, so it's literally like this crowd intelligence fighting against the system to try and figure out what's actually happening. What does it feel like to get a glimpse into the criminal mind, if I may ask?
It's really interesting is because it's like playing Uno for me. Right now, I start memorizing images, and it all started when it was a small archive, but now it's grown too big. But what is interesting is this particular pair centers on a wild goose chase because it had too much data. So can you just go one more slide? So those who have read the book, this is an inscribed bronze, and these are the ones that are hidden by the sister in New York. And they had, the script that is written is in Tamil, my home language. It reads Sutta Valli. And today, after 800 years, the town is named Sutta Malli. So Va had become Ma. And because there was no town called Sutta Valli, we kept searching. We never came up with the town. And for 2 years, we were searching for this clue. And finally, we managed to find the original record of this temple, where the town had changed its name over 800 years. By meantime, the sister has hidden these two, and plus 2 more bronzes. So again, these kind of information, how we encourage our, so we have small focus groups on Facebook. When we first started, we, thanks to the tech revolution, every small city in the world had our techie guys there. So what we would do is we would tell them, take photos. We will run like Jaina week, Buddha week, Tirthankara week, Shiva week, Vishnu week. And then people will be encouraged to take photos. Take one with you, one without you. Those were the days before selfies, of course. So send us the image without photos. And, I think Facebook helped us a lot. For a few Facebook likes over the last decade and a half, we have built the largest collection of dispersed Indian art all over the world. So any name, any museum, we have it. Plus, once we started getting these successes, people said we want to contribute. So as I said, we don't want money. We never wanted money. So we asked them, can you buy brochures, old books, catalogs? And all these are now part of our data mining exercise where we data mine the archive for that. And volunteers basically buy the books, scan it, and we keep the digital copy. The original stays with them. Later, it's now gone into an extent where, when I say it's not just Indian volunteers, we have a lot of scholars and people who are on the right side of the art market writing to us. So whenever there's a private sale or an auction sale, when they see an Indian object, people are sending to us, people are reporting thefts, people are reporting fines. So I think social media is not all too bad, but it has its pluses and minuses.
This is delicious irony that it's connecting both robbers and buyers.
Not only that,
but also connecting volunteers who are helping taking them down.
And girlfriends as well. So Subhash Kapoor, one of the key problems that he had was he had too many girlfriends. And one such jilted girlfriend in Singapore outed him out as well. So yeah, you can read more about it in the book. I'm not trying to pitch the book, but please read about it. And I think this is what my task is. I go through old archives, and this is a particular French Institute archive in Pondicherry, which I salute. They documented about 5% of Tamil Nadu's temples in 1956. This was a time when they were not digitized, so you had these small bin cards, which you had about 500 to 600 of them. You do the morning session, you find a possible match via eye matching, and then they would bring out the transparency, and then you get the original. So you're talking, if it's a Nataraja, I think they have 4,864 Natarajas in their catalog. So it's a lot of days when you go matching. And one such match yielded this. And this was the return of the dancer. This is the Nataraja that was bought by Australia for 5.6 million, stolen from the empty shrine, the robber photo on which Kapoor bid. His catalog, bought by the National Gallery of Australia. The curator said, there are hundreds of Natarajas, they all look the same, you guys don't know the difference. So we put the proof on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, Poetry in Stone, Return of Dancer, you will see the proof that we gave to him. It was so obvious. The nicks, cuts, bruises, the breakages were all captured buy the original in situ photograph by the French Institute. So finally this happened. Again, the Prime Minister got it. But more interestingly, he was brought back and kept in the same place from where he was stolen. Just go on. So he's there, he's gone back, and more interestingly, the village, actually the temple was in ruins before, and this is how the temple was renovated by the villagers to receive its Lord. And it was not just enriching for us, it was enriching for the community as well.
That's beautiful. And I think before we move to audience questions, the last question I really wanted to ask you was, what's changed? You said that hundreds more idols have now been returned to India as a result of your team of volunteers. But beyond that, has there been institutional change? Is there more attention that the world is now giving to the theft of Indian art objects?
I think first of all, wherever the Prime Minister went, at least before COVID, he came back with a stolen Moorti, and they were already 4 feet to India, and I think it's created the buzz among the bureaucracy. There have been quite a number of friends within the network. For example, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, who was the principal economic advisor, now is the economic advisor, has been a great friend. He challenged us to solve a few cases as well, which we have solved. And I think the Department of Revenue Intelligence part of Customs, we have kind of working with them on capacity building. 2 years ago, they've included in their brief, so along with just not bullion and drugs, they also work on solving the cases of art theft and art crimes. So maybe we end the session with one restitution video of a village receiving their god.
The one after this? Or do you want to watch this? Okay.
So, yeah, this one. So, this is actually the restitution of the Kulasegaram Odayar Temple Nataraja that was returned by the National Gallery of South Australia. And about 8,000 people welcomed its return. He was stolen in 1978. And this is how the Lord triumphantly returned back to his abode. And I'd like to end on that note. We are just vehicles. The gods choose the time to come home, and hope you will see more about us. It's been a great year. We've done 4 restitutions this year. We hope to reach 1,000 by next year. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, let's go to questions. So please raise your hands, and you there, ma'am.
Hi Vijay, this is Sahiti here. I just would like to ask, in the ones restitutions that your team, volunteer team contributed to, do you have more female form art forms or male form art forms that have come back?
I think a lot of the art forms that we're working on come back not because of the gender, but because they have been documented. It's documentation that's been a problem. So for us, bulk of what we've brought back includes items that are from, for example, the Indus Valley. We've had terracotta seals from Chandraketuga. We've got a lot of murtis that are common to all Jain, Buddhists. So don't look at us with any colored lens. For us, every murti, we call it gods because we just want to make sure of the distinction that they were never created to be pieces of art, especially on the Indian context. These are objects of worship, especially from, for example, if you take Chola bronzes, my specialty, they're called Thirumenis. Thirumeni in Tamil means body of God. That means they're living gods. They are bathed in the morning, they're woken up singing songs, they're ceremoniously fed. Celebrations happen to them and they are sung to sleep, and the priest will take care of them as though he's taking care of a baby. So for us, I think the bulk of the problem that we have is the lack of documentation in India, and we don't pick and choose the cases. The gods decide, they give us the evidence and we fight.
Vijay, I appreciate your clarification, but can you please answer my question? When you have gotten them back and documented them, how many are female form and how many are male form? Which are more? I don't want to know the number. I just want to know which are more.
I would say that many of that you have brought back that comes to my memory is androgynous forms and couples. So Shiva, Parvati together, Of course, if you're going about Jain faith, most of it is male. So I would say about 60-70% could be male and joint forms, and a considerable number. And in fact, my favorite is the Uma that we got back from Singapore. In fact, I have her painted, and she is with me at home as a painting that she's come back. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you could change your statement to success has many mothers and fathers. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Yuma.
I'm going to ask a rather frivolous question, but I was very interested when you said that your people don't like to give up millions of dollars worth of this thing, and you were talking about the museum curator who was rather salty about it, and he was saying, you know, maybe you don't have the right God that you're asking back for. So have you had like some really like incidents that stand out in your memory where people were just like, well, I'm not giving this back to you because I paid for it?
I would say that our success rate for our restitution claims has gone up a lot, because now I think the Western museums, especially the encyclopedia museums, don't want to get caught. What we do, we give them an option to do it the nice way, the quiet way. Otherwise, we name and shame them in public. And we have been branded as vigilante. In fact, now if I go into a museum, security guards are already behind me. And when I go up on stage, there are museum curators tweeting saying, Vijay is going up on stage, who's he going to expose now? So yeah, I think that's what we want to be. We want to be a deterrent, because for too long, as this art market has been unpoliced, undocumented, and free hand. I think Indian art was considered fair game before, but we don't want it to be. This is like, it's akin to wildlife trafficking. When the buying stops, the looting stops.
Yuma.
My question is slightly on a tangent from sculptures, because I have studied more about jewelry, but I do understand this distinction between art and God, idols of gods and stuff. But my question was something more along the lines of how many pieces that you're getting back are from colonial times, or are they mostly taken out during post-colonial years? And also, how do you track down pieces that were taken out in the colonial time with third parties, like let's say Imre Schweiger, who is very well known, not only for like jewelry, he even took out a lot of Harappan sculptures and stuff. And you can see that they've been donated by him to various museums and stuff. But my question is, when sometimes a lot of these pieces were given to them, not gods of course, but like jewelry for example, were given to these dealers to like take them out for money in a hushed way. So how do you track those kind of transactions which happened in colonial years, even if it's something to do with sculptures?
As I said, we do fight colonial battles, but that is on a ethical battle. First of all, we want the encyclopedic museums basically to display in context, to say that this was acquired by colonial masters. For example, I'm tracking an artifact in the V&A, which was a buried hoard, which the temple custodians bid for, but they were outbid by Lord Curzon, the Viceroy of India. So, you know, even though the museum can say that as per the Antiquities Act, or, yeah, so it's gray, but we are working on something that's very special. Pretty soon, we hope there will be a major restitution from an erstwhile colonial power, which will open the proverbial floodgates. But I think things are moving ahead with the Benin case. But people have to realize that unlike other civilizations like Egypt or Italy even, they are from tombs and graves. But here we are talking about objects that have been removed from active worship, or from buried hoards that were buried for the reason to bring them back to worship, as we saw earlier. Lastly, if my problem is a lot of people cast aspersions on these kind of gifts. People don't realize there are no benevolent gifts. They come with tax breaks. So it's actually the public money. So in the US or Australia, if you gift under the cultural gifts program, you get actually a tax break that you can carry forward for 4 to 5 years at a valuation that you can value it. So nobody can value accurately what an object worth. So it is tax evasion, fraud, money laundering, which is why the US actually brought it under the Banking Secrecy Act and money laundering aspect. But mostly the cases that we have problems with, whenever scholars, when I say scholars, there are celebrated Lotus awarded scholars, I don't want to call it by the right name, who have aided writing catalogs for these dealers, evaluating objects. They we as amateurs, I have no formal training in art, it's just my own learning. If I can spot it's something that's been moved, none of them open their mouth, and they did not open it for 6 decades. And I think that has to stop, and we have to expose these so-called scholars. But the thing is, feel up to it and report thefts. If you find a spurious transaction, if you're afraid of being exposed, and that's why we form a buffer. A lot of our cases, informants come to us and say, look, it's a local bigwig, I can't take it, but I want to get the Moorti back. So we respect that information. We protect the confidentiality of our informants. Law enforcement knows that they cannot bully us to provide details, and we've been successful chasing what are generally considered hopeless cases.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further? Yeah, yes.
So Vijay, first of all, take a bow for the commendable work you're doing. Truly respect. You shared some pics where officials were involved, So I'm sure you must have faced a lot of resistance, working in this space, coming from the system in itself. Would you like to share some experience?
My wife is sitting in the audience, so I don't want to scare her, but she knows. My dad calls me Vananga Mudi, that in Tamil literally translate to the head that doesn't bow. I think we are doing God's work. We cannot be bowed down. We should not be bowed down. And I think in the past, scholars have used that excuse. We need to expose these crooks. This is a shared heritage of India. It's a shared wisdom of our ancestors. These are ancestral treasures. Imagine if somebody picks your pocket on the road. What do? You get together, 10 of you, whack the shit out of him. Here somebody is robbing your gods and publicly auctioning them. And that's why we called it the India Pride Project, to restore India's pride, one artifact at a time. We are doing God's work. We should not be scared.
You, sir, in the first row. Okay. Yes.
So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about, so you mentioned the word like syndicates, and that there's big organized groups. I wanted to know what the biggest one that you busted was. What was the most vast? Was it the Kapoor case? And how many are out there, do you think?
Kapoor yielded 2,622 objects valued at $108 million or 807 crores as holding stock in 14 storage locations just in New York. And he was just a mid-size dealer who was in business for 35 years. Through Kapoor, we got into Verna and IFOMC. There are about 68 people who are behind bars in India. We are still scratching the surface. There's a lot more networks that need to be cracked. There is a sequel and a prequel to Idol Thief, and I can't reveal more.
Okay. And are we going to see a Netflix film or anything?
Prophetic. I think the Idol Thief is optioned out, and you
Wonderful.
will see something up soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I think that's all the questions that we have time for. Once again, Vijay, thank you so much for the amazing work that team have been doing, and thank you for doing this session with all of us.
Thank you. And read more about us and spread the word. If you are in power, we need better laws and we need better action against criminals to bring our gods home. Thank you, everyone. Jai Hind.